Most people who think of the Silmarillion, if they think of it at all, think of it as an uncompleted work of Tolkien. It reads like a historical appendix with thick, descriptive paragraphs and relatively little dialogue. But what is it really? If you dig into it, the Silmarillion is really elvish, murder, porn. It's the story of the suffering, torture, and murder of large numbers of elves. There's sometimes, for a little variety, the suffering, torture, and murder of large numbers of men. You may think it's just a fairy tale, and that's how fairy tales are written. But in most fairy tales, the good guys aren't slaughtered over and over. In most fairy tales, nearly all the main characters do not die in spectacularly horrible deaths, which is what the Silmarillion is all about. Tolkien creates big, extended families of elves and describes how each one dies, usually in combination with humiliation and betrayal and immense frustration. I have to wonder if Tolkien conceived this as elvish murder porn entertainment for people who love to read about the suffering and death of elves. This analysis will go through the book step by step and explore its unusual nature.
Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Lady Balefire, and we are on part 5 of our Silmarillion read-along. And let me get everyone else on stage. Have High King Feanor here.
What's up, guys?
Gadfly and Nathan and Manetheren. What's happening, everyone? I hope you liked today's introduction. I felt kind of silly, and I found this book when I was looking to buy a copy of the Silmarillion. It's some dude, it's like self-published on Amazon, and it was this like humorous commentary about the Silmarillion, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and I'll just do like an AI voice or something. And then I found Snoop Dogg AI voice, so
I was wondering if that was it.
Rap. Yeah, so I had to go to my West Side roots and have some fun with the Silmarillion, because maybe elvish murder porn is a good way to put these last few chapters of the Silmarillion.
I don't know that he might have thought of that as appropriate, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, definitely. So I just wanted to say hi to everyone in the chat before we get started. We have Jacob. Hi, Jacob. John Thomas, you've been here for the whole time. Good to see you. We got Will in the chat. He's sitting right next to me. Teresa, hey, what's happening? Oh my gosh, we had such a great stream last Thursday. And if you like classical music, it's just us nerding about that for 2 hours. It was awesome. And Dawn of Mutilation, hello. Welcome. So I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving, and everyone in the chat as well.
Yep.
And can you believe it? This is the end of the Silmarillion, this last section. It was very, I don't know. I had a lot of feelings when I got to the end of these 3 chapters. What do you guys think?
When we get to the end of it, we can talk about how it's the structure of the whole book is about the foibles and the failings of created individuals. But once again, the last chapter it's the Armageddon story where the good comes in to eliminate the evil. So all the crap that has built up until the very end has been wiped away almost, because he does have that little bit at the end that goes on to say that it's the evil of the seed of evil is still in the hearts of men and elves.
Yes,
but
always.
it's a pattern of pointing forward towards that ultimate victory of good over evil. But in getting there, you have to wade through a lot of evil.
Yeah. So my question here, so that last battle, and Tolkien never got to writing it, what is it known as?
The Dagor-Dagorath.
That's right.
The final battle. in which Morgoth escapes the doors of night and wages one last war upon the Valar. And depending on, well, if we want to get into it, the ending of that later, we can after we finish up with the Silmarillion proper. But there's 2 different endings to it.
Is that one of the Unfinished Tales ones?
Well, it was originally a concept by J.R.R. Tolkien, which I believe Christopher Tolkien said wasn't canon because it didn't fit into like there was something narratively wrong with it. I think that his father was having issues with. Yeah. So
it was one of those ideas that Tolkien knew the ultimate end was going to be this last battle, but he wasn't sure exactly how things were going to play out, what was like, who was going to be involved, what the ultimate end was. Well, he knew the ultimate end was going to be good triumphing over evil, but how everything played out, didn't really go into that. So it was it was something that he didn't put a lot of work into because he was too busy dealing with all the other stuff. But the Unfinished Tales, like every chapter in the Silmarillion is also in the Unfinished Tales in some way or other, and those Unfinished Tales become the things that are the other books, like the Fall of Numenor and Gondolin and of Beren and Luthien. Those sets of Unfinished Tales get worked into their own stories.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading those. I did find like the second part of those at a used bookstore at one point in time, but they're in California along with most of my books. That's driving me crazy. Yeah, so let's jump into it. Chapter 22, The Ruin of Doriath. And when we thought it couldn't get worse for Turin, Turin wasn't bad enough. We find out what happens to Turin, the father, who has been chained upon a throne and forced to watch the ruin and downfall of his entire family by Morgoth because he is an asshole. And so eventually, though, you know what? He lets him go. He's all like, you seen it all, like, go home. So he, and he was there for 28 years. And of course, he leaves and he's old and bitter. And he tries to reach Turgon with the eagles, but Turgon refuses. And I guess at this moment, he screams out Turgon's name. When it kind of gives away Turgon's location of what's that place called? Was it Doriath? Gondolin. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Sorry. I'm. You know what? I need to get a map, and I really want to get that like blue edition of the book that has the big maps in it. Because that one. Yeah, Christmas is coming. Yeah, I'm gonna have to read it with the maps because I think that's gonna change my whole entire perspective. But anyway, so
helps so much.
The eagles won't take him to Turgon. He screams out his name, and thus revealing Turgon's location to Morgoth, which plays out later. And then while he's wandering out in the wilderness, he finds his wife, Morwen, and she's crying at the memorial that was set up for Turinbar and his sister. And she sees him, and they're happy to be reunited, but she knows she's dying, and she's like, I'm gonna die as soon as the sun sets. And she keeps asking him how did they meet each other, like, our son and our daughter, how did they end up? And he won't tell her, and she eventually dies, and he buries her and makes a cairn, and it's a big monument there. And then he leaves to go to Nargothrond, and he finds Mim, the douchebag dwarf, and he is living in what is that place called? Somebody refresh my memory. I can't remember the city.
Nargothrond. Yeah.
Nargothrond. Okay. And he finds Mim, the douchebag dwarf, and kills him because he's just been sitting there on the hoard of treasure that the dragon had collected, and he kills the guy because he's an ass. And he finds in there a Finrod's necklace. I'm going to not pronounce this right, Noglamir. Is that
No,
right?
yeah, that's correct. That's correct. That's correct.
Yep.
Good job.
Nuglamere. So he finds that there and he takes it, knowing that it belonged to Finrod, and eventually he makes his way to Thingol and I can't remember where he's at. I'm totally blanking on the names of places today. Nemigroth. Okay. Yes. Okay. So he's very mad and angry at what happened to his family, and he kind of throws the necklace at him and is like, "Bro, this is your payment for taking care of my family." And then while he's in Nargothrond, he's under the protection of the girdle of Melian. Like his kind of like bitterness and the spell that Morgoth put on him kind of breaks, and he realized that he was wrong and that, you know, they did good by him, and he feels really bad.
What Melian tells him, and what Huron knows as truth inside him, is that whatever Morgoth shows you is tinted with lies and deception.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knows that everything he had seen had been altered,
his perception
in such a way that it put it hindered the relationships between men and elves in Huron's eyes.
Yeah, it'd been like, I think that Tolkien would use the word, it would be like torn asunder or something like that. He likes that word a lot. And I think that's a good way of putting that, or it's sort of like a reality distortion field. So he finally sees that, and the bad thing is that, well, Thingol really wants the necklace and he likes it, and he's like, "Hey, this would look really good with the Silmaril I found." And so he has the dwarves from Eärendil who have been coming into the kingdom and still like talking to the elves and stuff like that and working for them. He's like, "Hey guys, you want to put this Silmaril into this bitchin' ass necklace that I have?"
Mm-hmm.
And so they do. And then they but you know, it's a Silmaril and they're dwarves and they like shiny objects, so they're like, "Hey, this is really cool. We should totally keep it." And so,
well, the other thing to keep in mind here is Nauglamir had been part of the dragon's horde of Glaurung.
yeah.
And you remember the dragon sickness that people experience when they deal with a dragon's horde. It infects them with greed and envy and a desire to possess the wealth and the treasure.
That's absolutely right. Like thinking back to The Hobbit, because I don't think they really talk about it that much in these stories, but
yeah, in The Hobbit, Thorin in particular, in his obsession over the Arkenstone is kind of affected by it, and the other dwarves are as well. And it's Bilbo with his modest desires of life that is able to resist and break free from the dragon sickness.
I love how hobbits are just so like basic that like nothing can touch them. They're like, "We're so chill. All we want to do is like smoke pipe weed in the Shire and just like grow our plants." And
we want to tend our gardens and look after our babies, and that's all that life is.
I'm down with the hobbits. Like I'm gonna move to Hobbiton when I retire. Like that's my goal.
Well, it's quite the opposite of mankind. It's like the hobbits, the rarity is those who want to seek after things. So like the Sackville Baggins is where the exception among hobbits, and whereas most men in terms of their desire for attainment, that's the quiet person wanting to sit there and chill on his pipe in this world is kind of the rarity, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think this story kind of like this whole chunk of like book sets that up a lot, because you really see the like epic heroes, the epic desires, the epic like fates that like affect these people in the end. So yeah, good point. So those dwarves and Thingol. Yo, of all of the elves, like I think Thingol is like one of the biggest, like just assholes. Like he's very like elf centric, elf supremacist here, and he's also has a pretty like high opinion of himself. And so what ends up happening is he goes to get his necklace and he goes by himself because he's single, like he's gonna mess with me. It's like I'm married to a Maiar, like bro, fight me. And well, the dwarves are like, they come up with some BS to say, hey, I think you need to pay us a lot or whatever, like this is really ours, or I don't remember exactly what they say. But
they say that because the necklace was Finrod's, Thingol has no claim over it. And because the dwarves made the necklace for Finrod, they have a superior claim to it.
And that, which is a fair point if you're from the dwarves' perspective, because Thingol really doesn't have a claim to the Silmaril or the Noglamir, if we're being honest. It was it's more of his pride getting in the way for the fact that Baron and Luthien went on that quest, and probably out of grief for Hurin too.
He has the claim to them through the conquest of Hurin and Baron. Hurin and Baron won those prizes and gave them to him.
Isn't that kind of sad that in a way Thingol like sold his daughter for like Silmaril?
Well,
I mean, not like he sold her, but like that was the thing. That was the price. He's like, you could have her for a Silmaril instead of just saying like, hey, you guys could get married. I'm happy for you guys. Like you have to get me this thing. And then he gets this Silmaril and then he gets this necklace. And the two things end up causing him the most grief of his life.
The whole point of the Silmaril being the prize is that it was an unobtainable prize.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to be, it was essentially him refusing Baron as husband to Luthien without direct refusal of it. And once again, that's a classic trope in mythology and legend and stuff. That
absolutely,
it's sort of holy grail type quest where it's unachievable for mortal man, but through the assistance of the divine and through them, not through their own prowess, they are capable of winning it. And so that's Tolkien once again just building off of his huge expanse of literature, like knowledge of literature and history and all that stuff. So it's not that he's sold Luthien for
I know he didn't sell her, but that was the price. And then he's like, okay, I have a Silmaril, and that the Silmaril just is like his downfall.
More so him saying she is priceless to me
as a Silmaril. Yeah.
But yeah, it's the Silmarils being the downfall of the elves is, I mean, that's the whole point of the story of the Silmarillion.
Yeah, that is really crazy. And again, this is a great part, like where it really like it feels like the ring of power, and it's like the kind of effects that it has. And I think Tolkien was really like exploring the ideas of, the sort of classic deadly sins and like how they affect people, especially with finding a Silmarils or like the ring or anything.
You can see how people will say that it is allegorical. But obviously that's people putting their own allegory onto it.
Oh, definitely.
You can see how people would say the ring or the Silmarils or etc. are allegories for things like nuclear power and nuclear weaponry and stuff like that.
I choose to see it more as like an exploration or a variation on these themes of like these sort in like wrath or envy or pride, and see how it plays out with characters.
Greed.
It is
greed.
It is what fiction and mythology and legends are in that they're explorations of human nature. Right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we write, right?
The thing that I would argue, though, is that I would say the Silmaril had harsher consequences than the ring, because
oh, absolutely.
when Thingol took it, he not only did it obviously arouse the anger of the dwarves with the Noglamir and everything, he got himself taken up in the doom of the Noldor when he took the Silmaril automatically, because you have the sons of Feanor who are bound by their oath to.
Oh,
to
yeah, that's an
retrieve it.
interesting point. Is like how many people are caught in this dragnet of the doom of the Noldor.
Then as Gadfly said, you have the dragon sickness aspect of it, and with the Noglamir, and what was the and then you have Hurin, who had just shown up, and because of the curse of Morgoth, now Thingol, that whole, so pretty much Doriath as a whole was under a sort of Damocles at this point. It's just waiting for it to drop, because you have all of these things culminating pretty much at once. And the Silmaril was like the coup de grace to it. It was just taking that it's over. So
it's so crazy.
I saw it as a definite caution, like Tolkien's cautionary tale against the woes of idolatry. You have this thing, like it's set up as an idol. The Silmaril is only a representation of the light that was pure, that was existing over in the Valinor, and so you have this as a representation, and all of Elvenkind sat there and then all of a sudden started focusing on this rather than what they had in the blessings in the Undying Lands.
Well, that is true. Yeah, that is true. But at the same time, it's incredibly fascinating that these devices, which have been used to sow the destruction of the elves, are the things that come about to defeat Morgoth and the forces of darkness, right? So this necklace, the Nauglamir with the Silmaril in it, we will see in later chapters becomes a despite it being under the curse of, or the doom of Feanor and all that sort of stuff, it is the object that leads to the salvation of the elves.
Absolutely.
But that comes later.
And I'll tell you, reading about all these terrible events, what do we call it? Elvish murder porn.
I gotta find a book that it was for like the guy that wrote it, because it's really funny.
Well, the thing is, reading about all these terrible events, it makes you wonder, because we talked about this in a previous stream, but I believe it was Olmo, the Valar Olmo, who came to the conclusion that bringing the elves to Valinor was a huge mistake, and that they should have just been left to their own devices in Middle-earth.
Oh,
and it's
true.
like, how different would the history of Middle-earth been had the Valar just said, you guys can stay put. We're not going to bring you west.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I wonder... how much of this would have transpired?
The other thing as well is that Olmo is the one Valar who remains directly active.
Yes,
in the world.
The most active. He's pretty.
Yeah, he protects people. Like, he does stuff. I'm the one that I don't hate him.
he's the entire reason the city of Gondolin exists. He was the one who put that into motion, that into being, pretty much. But no, it was that was a thought while you guys were talking. I was like, man, how different would have been, obviously you don't get the creation of the Silmarils, but on the flip side,
there wouldn't have been the kind of highfalutinous that a lot of the elves had, just knowing that they could go back there, and the sort of
the question
divine protection and providence that they believe they have. Their
the
manifest destiny, if you could say, even. Sorry.
The other question is, would the elves have survived at all with Morgoth and his orcs and Morgoth's practice of capturing them and turning them to orcs and stuff like that?
I think so, and I'll tell you why. Because early on in the War of the Powers, when the Valar ended up it was Tulkas and the Valar who ended up capturing Morgoth. That was prior to them bringing the elves westward. So during that time frame, you have a period of time where the elves can build themselves up in Middle-earth. They don't have to worry about Morgoth. Sure, Sauron's there, Balrogs are still there, but it's not Morgoth being the head honcho of all that evil going on. So I think between that and probably like being overseen by the Valar and just like cautiously watching over the elves. And obviously, I don't think Eru Ilúvatar would have allowed the elves to get exterminated. I just don't see that happening. I think at some point he would have intervened and dealt with that. But
the other interesting thing
I
is
would argue that
ahead.
the intervention was bringing the elves to Valinor. But we can get into
we can argue that later.
I know my thing was thinking that if that had happened, then it actually would have like spurred a lot of the elves into action, because there were a lot of different points where if they would have unified together and they would have been more proactive with like stopping like Morgoth, that they would have been a lot more successful, like Fingolfin, for example, or like if they would have like but I think it's their kind of like they're basically immortal lives that they have. They're very long lived and whatnot that kept them from taking action. So you get this huge intergenerational conflict. And anyway, let's go back to Thingol.
Let's go back to Doriath. We got sidetracked.
Yeah. So Thingol walks into the door. It's like, hey, dude, like, give me my necklace, you know? And he's by himself because, like, no one can touch him. And they're, like you said, they had actually pretty good claim on it. And they wanted to keep the Silmaril because that's what Silmaril power does to people. And he goes on this kind of crazy rant that, like, have you guys ever seen Gangs in New York? And that one guy, like, he has this character in that movie that has this like insane like racist rant. He's a very like nativist, like Civil War era, like kind of a thing. And it just really reminded me of that. He's basically telling the dwarves, you guys are garbage. Like, you know, I'm an elf, I'm higher than you, and you're just like lesser beings, blah, blah, blah. And it insults them and they get really angry and they just band together and kill him. And they take the necklace. And
it's then
I was like, that was the thing that happened.
the lust of the dwarves was kindled to rage by the words of the king.
Yep.
So they already had that, like they were obsessed. And obviously Thingol was also obsessed, and so I can put the blame at Thingol's feet, but I also put the blame at the dwarves' feet, because once again we also have Mim, right, who's another example of the dwarves who the greatest flaw of the dwarves is their lust and desire for the things of the earth.
Yeah. Because that goes back to their creation with what's his name?
Aule.
Yeah. I probably should remember that just because of like that awful show we're not going to talk about. And he's like, Aule's beard.
Oh,
give me the meat. But
we're gonna have to. We're on a side note, real quick. We are gonna have to do a stream when the first trailer for that Trash Fire comes out.
Oh,
like all of us are gonna have to get together.
I got roped into like watching that garbage before I'd even read any of like Tolkien, and now I've read
Lord,
Tolkien.
no.
I think like I'm like Feanor, like let's go burn some shit. Like I hate that. I hate to see them more. And anyway.
Anywho.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we? Okay. Yeah.
So the dwarves kill Thingol and they flee.
They flee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're chased and killed, and Naglamar is returned to Melian.
Mm-hmm.
And the dwarf survivors, they rile up the mates in Norgod and drop an army to attack Doriath, and they actually do that. But while this is happening, Melian is changed in her grief. They don't really give us any like more explanation than that, and I thought that was interesting because again, I go through this thinking about Tolkien's experiences in World War I and how many people like how many different ways he must have experienced grief and stuff like that.
In this particular way with Melian, it's because she's a Maiar who decided to stay in the land, very similar to Morgoth.
Mm-hmm.
She has tied herself into
there's that extra connection.
Because she gave birth to a daughter, that is even more so part of her essence is now externalized in her. from her. And so you can say that Thingol and Melian, 2 Melian, were 2 as 1.
Yeah.
And so with Thingol's physical death here, that has deprived Melian of a portion of herself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that's really interesting, the ways that those two characters, like, because they're kind of the same, like, power, they're come from the same thing. They're both like, or I mean, Melkor isn't, but like he's a Valar, right? And she's a Maiar.
Well, they're of the group of the Ainur. The Maiar are just the lesser of the 2 tiers. The Valar and the Maiar.
Yeah, that is interesting. I was definitely thinking about that, and I was also kind of thinking she's kind of the spirit of the land. Like, she's protected this land for so long, and so her grief is definitely, like, again, going back to the Gothic lit trope of like the interior emotional state is sort of represented in the exterior state. So her power starts to fail, and the protection that protected the area for so long fails. And she actually ends up just leaving back to Valinor. And nobody ever hears of her again. And that's where her story ends, which is like, every time I read something like that, it just feels like really tragic. It's just, it feels so epic. It reminds me of reading like mythology and stuff. So yeah. So then the dwarves attack Doriath because the protection isn't there. And
well, let's interject with one thing real quick. The reason why the dwarves of Nogrod attacked is because 2 of the surviving dwarves told lies and said that the Elven King ordered the dwarves to be killed.
Oh, yes.
And because of that lie, the dwarves got really pissed off and decided to sack Doriath. Yeah. And
we also have to pay respects to Mablung, the Heavy Hand.
Mm-hmm.
This is where he falls. Who was a big friend and assistant to Beren.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Oh yeah, he was. Yeah, that guy. Okay. There's so many characters in this story. I swear.
So I'm gonna need to reread. Yeah, so many of them. You're like, wow, this is an awesome, great person, and then they die.
Wasn't it Mablung and Beleg Strongbow who were both decided to go to unnumbered tiers, I believe it was. They joined in with the other elves for that battle, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
If I recall correctly, yeah.
And Mablung was there with Beren on the hunt to kill Karkaroth.
Yeah. Oh, I was reading Mablung and Beleg confused, I think.
Yeah. They're very similar fellas in how they are presented in the story. But that's, that's a archetype character.
Right.
Definitely.
Well, it's just funny because I'm sitting here listening to you, Gadfly, and Feanor just talk about these names, just kind of like, okay, this, and this, and this, and this. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, dude. It's like this is crazy. I mean, like, I'm sitting here like, oh, I had to. You said that that Thingol was married to the Maiar, and I'm like, huh? I'm looking back here in the
like,
trees, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. And then like, oh, and had a great daughter. Like who? Oh, Lúthien. Okay,
yeah.
Oh man,
it's
when you've been reading something for so long, I'm sure Gadfly can totally relate to this. It's like when you become so, because Tolkien, his entire the world of Arda, if you want to call it that, as far as like a universe, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I can just speaking for myself, when you become so ingrained in it, it does become almost like matter of fact, like when you're talking about it. So it's like Gadfly and I just thought to be talking about it, and I don't know, like we'd be talking about, I don't know, Fingolfin, he was Lord, I believe, in Hithlum, and then he during the battle of this and that and the other, blah 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 blah. Just like just casual,
right.
blah, blah. And then Yeah. No, I totally get it.
It's very relatable. Like for me, in terms of Bible study, it's like you get to a certain point where, yeah, you just kind of know these things. It becomes second nature in terms of, the recollective memory.
Right.
So it's just, but now that I'm on this side of it, it's just kind of like, wait a minute, carry the one. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm there. Nope, I'm not.
Nerd man starting a fight. Like, I don't know, Nerd man. Like,
oh no.
You've been discovered.
Okay. Listen. Okay, listen. It's not Alpha Chat anymore. It's Alpha. It's Alpha Priest of Eru, the Blessed Priest of Eru, Father Feanor.
He's on his redemption arc.
So to pull a line from what we've earlier discussed, you got to be careful, Brian, because the lust of the Feanor might be kindled to rage by your words.
Yeah. You don't want to get like and then that whole curse, that doom of Mandos, like the curse of the Noldor.
Yeah, it's kind of overrated. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm trying to buy gas. I'm like trying to get a 7-Up at like the 7-Eleven. Like, man, that curse in Noldor, like.
Oh man, good stuff.
Oh yeah. Okay, so the dwarves attack Doriath and Menegroth, and a whole bunch of elves and dwarves are slain, and the Silmaril is taken again. And then they call in Beren and Luthien and their kindred in the forest to help out. I think there were some green elves and stuff. And
the elves of Osiriand.
Osiriand, yes.
The dwarves go up through that route towards where Beren and Luthien are existing.
Yes.
And those dwarves are killed, and also the shepherds of the forest.
The Ents. Yep.
The Ents come in.
Oh, I was wondering about that.
Yep.
I meant to make a note of that. And I'm like,
also remember, go back to the Eärendil.
Mm-hmm. The foreshadowing.
Good to see you.
This strife between Aule and
Yavanna, yeah.
Yavanna.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And when she's like, I'm gonna, you're gonna destroy my earth, I'm gonna put someone there to protect her.
Yep. Which really the dwarves weren't they were just running away, and they ended up running to the end. So it's like they weren't really doing it. They just ran into the forest.
Are like, fuck around, find out.
Right.
So are the Ents located in Tower Im Duiniath? Is that where?
Hold up, let me grab my atlas real quick.
Okay. So it's like I'm thinking that.
That's
big
a good
forest south of
question. Now that
Doriath.
we're here, I didn't know that there was a change, Horatio. It's like, welcome to our show, and what do you guys think of this? That know the lore better than me.
Right here in this woods.
Hold on, let me see here. What do you guys think of the changes Christopher made to Thingol's death? Let me refresh my memory here. Oh my goodness. Let me pull this up here. Just had to go over my bookshelf.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what they did because this was my first read through. So I was very I was very surprised by how he died, and frankly, I was like, damn. That's been a lot of times with this book with me. I've just been like, so that's the thing that happened.
Let me pull this up because I don't remember.
Okay, while you're looking, I'm just gonna say that. Okay, so Beren and Luthien, they recover the Silmaril and they give it to Luthien, and I think it's really interesting that she ends up wearing it, and they talk about she becomes the fairest of them all on Arda, and I thought that was interesting because it reminded me of that mirror of Galadriel, and she's when she's
oh, okay,
too much as being fair and terrible, but go ahead, Feanor.
I got it. So, just refresh my memory. So, Thingol was originally supposed to have been killed in battle with the dwarves. However, according to the narrative introduced as much hesitation in the published Silmarillion by Christopher Tolkien, it occurred immediately after the reforging of the Noglamir. So he was supposed to die in battle, but instead was just pretty much assassinated by the dwarves. And I think as narratively, I think it works better. than just having an all-out conflict and having him get killed in battle. Personally.
Yeah, I kind of see him as not like a character that was really ever that involved with the battle, so he was never established as somebody that would go out and fight. However, there is this story of him being kind of corrupted by the Silmaril and the sort of the, like you guys said, the dragon madness that came with that too, and having all of that like obsession about the necklace and stuff like that. Like it kind of just plays out.
He has been in combat before. Thingol, I believe, if I recall correctly, it was him that he killed. It was right before the Noldor arrived after the Kinslaying. He ended up killing some captain of Angband who might have even been a Maiar.
Okay.
yeah. Thingol was powerful, but which is probably why one of the reasons why he went in alone to the dwarves. Which is another reason why I think it works. You know, pride was his ultimate downfall.
Exactly.
Was the other issue in terms of narrative progression is how do the dwarves get out? So do these dwarves just go and then cry foul to their people and then they come in, or do the dwarves fight Thingol? Thingol kills some of them and drives the others out. Then they go and they spread the lies, and the dwarves come, right? So
if you still have Thingol alive, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but if you still have Thingol alive, you would think whoever was the king of Nogrod at the time and Thingol would come like meet and have terms and be like, hey, this is what really occurred here. You know?
Yeah.
So I think you'd have to, you can't have, it's almost like you can't have any witnesses for this to work.
Yeah.
You know, so but you have to go Thingol.
The primary essence of the story and the necessity of the story is that Thingol dies because of the doom of Feanor that he brought onto himself by him desiring and taking the Silmaril.
Here's an interesting thought, guys. Was like Thingol's assassination, was he like the Franz Ferdinand of like Middle Earth and what's happening? Because it kind of like really just starts off the big end all be all like battle. Yeah, I don't know.
If you remember from The Hobbit, when Thranduil kidnaps the dwarves, this event is actually, that's true. It is referenced.
Oh wow, that is very interesting. I have actually not read The Hobbit. I'm gonna read that next, and I actually have a really cool copy of it. It's the Rankin and Bass, like it's got all the illustrations from that, so it's very vintage and. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that again. A little lighter fare.
That speaks to what I was talking about when we started these streams, though. This book enriches all the rest of the Legendarium.
Yeah. I mean, like, like my list of like rereads now is like so hard.
so with my question about the Ents, it says here as the dwarves, as they climbed the slopes beneath Mount Dolmed, there came forth the shepherd of the trees, and they drove the dwarves into the shadowy woods of Eärendil, which is east of that mountain range, the northeast portion of it.
Oh, okay.
So would that mean that the Ents were in the southern portion, like Eärendil, and drove them northward? I don't know, and it's tough. I don't think you can really discern it from the text of where exactly they came from.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. I'm
I'm
just glad you brought that to my attention, because I was like one of those things, like when I was reading like the first chapter, and I'm like, oh, that dude's like, that's Gandalf. Yeah, I'm gonna be my next reread of this stuff is gonna be so next level after reading this. I'm really excited about that.
Let me see here. I'm looking.
Just to keep going while Feanor's looking at stuff, right?
I'm looking at the maps right now.
Okay. Go for it, Gadfly.
The Nauglamir passes on to Luthane, and Luthane decides that and Beren decide that they are going to depart the world, and so she gives the Glaumir to Dior. Yeah.
And Dior is like their son,
grandson of Thingol.
Yeah.
And Dior comes down to Doriath and Menegroth and rules Doriath for a short period of time.
Yeah, they really tried to rebuild it and make it what it was again.
Yeah, but you get introduced to another very important character here with Elwing.
Yep.
Oh, yes, Elwing.
Yeah. And
yes,
well, there's also her brothers, Elured and Elurin, but as what happens with a lot of individuals in this story, they disappear from the story
for a while.
Fate unknown.
Fate
unknown. Yeah, it sort of reminded me of the Princes in the Tower. Like, when was that? In England, like way back during the War of the Roses, and the two princes that like just were put in the tower and they just sort of disappeared.
Richard II with his nephews in the tower. What happened to them?
The thing to note too is for a time Luthien wore the Noglamir with the Silmaril, and it is said that that actually accelerated her mortality because she was too beautiful for mortal lands.
But it's also because she was so beautiful
already.
It held off the pursuit of the Oath of Feanor.
That's interesting. It's sort of like her goodness kind of lessens it.
Yeah. The Sons of Feanor didn't want to mess with
like,
that.
We like
we're gonna wait till you die.
But the Sons of Feanor do come.
Yes, they do.
And they destroy Doriath. But at least the most egregious asshole sons of Feanor are killed in the process.
Oh yeah, totally. Right. By the Celegorm, Curfin, and Caranthir die, and also Dior, his wife, and the sons. And
Caranthir was okay. He was all right.
Yeah, he was okay.
He was okay. But the
Celegorm and Curfin, like the guys douchebags.
The cruel servants of Celegorm are the reason why Dior's sons go missing.
Mm-hmm. And weren't they the ones that were who was it? Celegorm was mistreating his dog, Huron. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Huron. Yeah.
Huron. Well, he wasn't mistreating the dog. He was just using it as a regular hound dog.
Yeah, it wasn't like recognizing the badassery, and Lucy just
But it was the eldest son, Mithros, who lamented what happened to the sons of Dior, and he went out trying to find them, but he couldn't do it. Caranthir was racist against if you care about. Okay. Yeah, but Caranthir saved the House of Haleth, so I mean, let's be cool about that. So
yeah, Haleth is pretty badass. I like her. She's just
but no, so yeah, the fate of the Sons of Dior is unknown. They probably died, if we're being honest with ourselves. But interestingly enough, I actually on Twitter, I don't know if any of you guys saw this. I posted it, I think this morning. And I totally spaced on the fact that we were doing the Fall of Doriath today. But there's an elf maiden who tutored Turin Turambar named Nellis. She's mentioned in the Children of Eärendil. She in like the proper book. She's not mentioned in the Silmarillion. And my own little headcanon is that she survived because she was just such a nice character. It's like, I don't want her to get killed. So just a little note there. I was thinking about that. I was like, oh man, what a coincidence. But yeah, she's there. She's the one who vouched for Turin after he had killed Saros. Or rather, his actions led to the death of Saros, I should say. He didn't directly kill him. And it was her who vouched for him and led to Beleg going on his quest to go find him. She's the kind of like the catalyst that set that off.
Which is another great trope in mythology.
Mm-hmm.
The nursemaid being the harbinger of wisdom to the security of the hero, but too late for the hero to know it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but
it's like
kind of
Yeah, I was just thinking that, and I was thinking it's almost like a counterpoint to the like kind of like wizard mentor character. It's usually male, like a female version of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's usually something more that has like something that's known too late, sort of. Yeah.
But the Sons of Feanor, to get back on topic, they don't get the Silmaril. The Silmaril escapes.
No, they don't. I don't think, like maybe it's not meant to be, guys.
Right.
Yeah, so Elwig, she comes back and she actually runs off with it, and she actually escapes with it, and Doriath is lost forever.
Mm-hmm.
That was really sad. Depressing stories, but that's how that chapter ends, and yeah,
now,
it's hard reading this stuff.
I have a quick question for Gadfly just to get his opinion on this. So obviously we know there is a treasure trove of weapons and armor and belongings that were in Menegoroth, courtesy of the dwarves. Mm-hmm. A lot of them forged by Telkar of Nogrod. Considering the fact that many of the weapons and treasures of Gondolin were found in a troll horde some 7,000 years later, do you think it is possible that any, like hypothetically speaking, it's obviously not in the text, but do you think that it is possible that the treasures, at least some of them of Menegoroth, survived into the second and third age?
Hypothetically possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hypothetically. Think of what happened to Turin like how he went through all of the underground tunnels to find the armor that was left, right? Like that happened. Am I remembering this correctly?
When we get to the end chapter of what we're doing today, the land is
broken.
Silmarillion, completely broken.
If you like.
But there's a theory that the dagger that Bilbo takes up and calls Sting is the old dagger of Glorfindel.
Oh,
and so
the
idea of all these treasures from Menegoroth and from Gondolin coming to Sirion, and then the massive battle that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's entirely feasible that
they're somewhere.
they're somewhere, scattered in places. Because the other thing is the orcs and the trolls and the Balrogs and all that stuff weren't eradicated at the end of that war.
No, they weren't.
And so what did they obviously went somewhere with whatever they had or whatever they could get.
Mm-hmm.
So why would not some of that be, treasures from looted enemies?
Yeah, and that's interesting.
The other thing to take in consideration too, the thing that popped in my head was you had the dwarves that waged a war in Doriath, and you also had the Sons of Feanor and their followers as well. And in war, especially if you're at ground zero in Menegoroth fighting, you're gonna take. If you end up defeating your foe, you're going to take whatever is there of theirs, and whatever the fate of that might be, who knows?
Yeah,
but
especially if it's a war after treasure, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Because that's what the Silmarils are, and the wars for the Silmarils are wars for treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And they're great treasures, but that's the thing that is we bring up constantly is they are just treasures.
Yep.
They're not as worthwhile as the life of a person.
Right, exactly.
That's interesting. Oh yeah, so here we go to the next. I'm like reading my notes and I'm like, okay, this was what I was thinking of. Like, okay, so we get to chapter 23. It's of Tuar and the fall of Gondolin, and Tuar was the guy that found the armor. So Tuar is the son of Huor, who was one of the human men that befriended the elves like back in the day. And
he's particularly one of the group of men who stayed behind to allow I forget I'm blanking on his name. Why am I blanking on his name? To allow the Gondolin forces to retreat. So Huor is one of the men who stayed behind, sacrificing themselves.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
allow Turgon to escape.
Yeah. So he is like Tuar is fostered by the elves, and then later on, when he's older, he gets enslaved by the Easterlings, and then after that, like during that time, he escapes to the caves of Androth. Now, this is where I'm getting totally confused with the place names, but I was just rolling with it. And he's later chosen by Ulmo to be his messenger, and he's led to Vinyamar, where he finds Turgon's shield and hauberk, and Ulmo speaks to him through a storm and gives him a magic cloak. And the cloak in this part, like, immediately made me think of Luthien and the cloak that she had, that she made of her hair, that like made her kind of invisible. And and then he comes upon Veronwë, who's saved by Ulmo after his group of Gondolin elves tried to reach Valinor. And if you guys remember, that was the group that had sailed away, and they were trying to make it through past those islands that were kind of like between like Arda and Valinor. And all of the ships would always like wreck, but almost saved this one guy. So Tuor and Veronwë reach Gondolin and deliver Ulmo's warning, but Turgon doesn't heed it and won't leave, but locks down instead. So he just doubles down, and he's like, "Yeah, this is my magic city. Like nothing's happening."
He remembers the warning that.
Oh yeah, he does. Yes.
To not grow too attached to his own makings. But the other thing to mention is you have Meglin, who is.
Yes, Meglin comes back. This dude. Oh, that dude.
Is. Once again, he despises Turgon because Turgon and Eärendil form a relationship, and so Meglin keeps giving advice to stay because he doesn't want Tuor to become as influential as he is, and you get all sorts of politicking going on in this chapter.
Yeah, and like just a refresher, like Meglin and Eärendil are cousins, right?
Yes.
And that was part of his curse, was that he would fall in love with his cousin, and she doesn't like him at all, and they were never going to be together. So he's got some incel energy going on with that.
You also remember that the two of them had a strong ability to read the hearts and almost minds of other people.
Yeah.
And so she could detect that he had this desire for her, and she was completely disgusted by it.
Yeah, she was totally grossed out. That is really interesting in this, because it's like, as you read the story, and it's kind of like thinking it in hindsight, there are certain elves that seem to have this ability more than other people. Like she does, Galadriel does. I think there were a few others, but it's never something that's really like expounded upon a lot. Like who has this power? They don't talk about how the hows and whys of it, but that's a great part about having like a softer magic system, and I like that, even though it is kind of confusing sometimes.
So something quick to note is that on the way to Gondolin, and we've talked about this briefly in previous streams, but on the way to Gondolin, Tuor encounters his cousin Turin. And ends up, it's a debatable topic, but really and truly he ends up really dodging a bullet, because he could have called out to him and like tried to, and found out that was, but he would have been embroiled in the curse of Morgoth had he done that. But he chose to let Turin just go and do his own thing without saying
the fellow mentioned here that they see is the man in the dark cloak with the staff and the sword. Is that's supposed to be Hurin?
Hold on. No, it's Turin, because it's at the they're near a river, if I recall correctly. Let me find it here.
Oh dang, that's one of those things like I need to reread right now.
Ulmo, Gondolin, blah 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 blah. Let me find it here. Where is it?
So you guys look. I'm gonna talk. Tuor marries Eärendil and and they have a son named Eärendil, and heeding to Ur's warning. I can't talk. Heeding to Ur's warning, Eärendil, like she actually like listens to the warnings and she starts having escape route out of there.
I found it. I found it. So at length they came in their journeying to the pools of Ivren and looked with grief on the defilement wrought there by the passage of Glaurung the dragon. But even as they gazed upon it, they saw one going northward in haste, and he was a tall man, clad in black and bearing a black sword. But they knew not who he was, nor anything of what had befallen in the south, and he passed them by, and they said no word.
Good.
Black sword is the word.
Yep. Yeah, black sword was the word.
Sword. That's like automatically its turn. Yeah, because the sword was broken when he died. So.
Oh, that's sad.
But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in. I thought it was important because it was very close to being an absolute disaster right there.
It also kind of like it's a clue to the timeline too.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Right. Well, and the thing is about the cloak that Ulmo put on Tur. Yeah, it shielded him from being seen by Turin because Turin was under that curse.
Oh, that's something interesting to say.
Yeah,
to think about.
But anyway, repulsive cousin love.
That was part of Maeglyn's curse. Yeah, so they sort of do that. So yeah, Tur marries Eärendil, and they have a son named Eärendil, and like it's like they're hearing the warning, and I thought this was really interesting. Is that both her and what's his name, her dad Turgon, like they heed the warning. I mean, Turgon hears it and thinks about it and stuff like that. So he's not as like prideful as other people in the past, but he's like more like nothing bad's going to happen to me. But she is like, okay, let's at least have a backup. And so she has a tunnel built so they can leave. And then this is the interesting part. So Maeglyn also has tunnels that leave as well out of Gondolin. And because he's out looking for ore.
So they both have secret tunnels that they don't let anybody else know about. Although Eärendil has a handful of people know about them. And so the question is like, who is this sort of Eärendil faction and who is this Maeglyn faction within Gondolin?
Oh, wait a minute. We have Jaden. I just want to say a special shout out to Jaden. Jaden has been supporting me for a really long time. And I know that he went out to do basic training. He joined the military. And I just want to say very happy holidays. I know you're on our Discord too. And we really support you. And we know that you're really busy and stuff like that. You don't have a lot of chances to read and stuff like that. But I hope you're doing well and that things are going well for you. And thank you so much for coming. So just wanted to say hi. All right, guys. Anyway, so these tunnels.
Yeah. So they've got their secret tunnels that both have their little political factions within Gondolin doing their own thing. And then, Maeglyn gets captured by Morgoth. And it seems like he doesn't need a lot of convincing to to betray, which is another very interesting thing, because one of the reasons why Turgon barricades or closes up the entrance to Gondolin is because he remembers the warning of treachery being the undoing of the elves who leave. So he barricades the wall or the entrance to Gondolin to stop other people from outside betraying them and acting treacherously.
Absolutely. And then that was all the thing too with all of the people that were getting captured by Morgoth and stuff and previously. So it's like I feel like of all of the people in the story, like the Gondolin is really the kingdom that like prepares the most and does the smartest stuff, but still there's the element of not being able to avoid your fate.
Right.
Plus, I also think Maeglyn's kind of an interesting character. I mean, I know there's a lot of like this sort of literary tropes and kind of historical beliefs. Like if you look in like Game of Thrones, they work this into Jon Snow a lot, that like the belief that the circumstances of your birth like really determine your character, like bastards are evil, treacherous people or something like that. And I feel like he really just embodies, Maeglan especially really embodies that sort of darkness that like his mother was kidnapped by what was that name? Aeon or something like that.
Eol,
Yeah.
the dark
If
elf.
you think
Yeah.
about
The
it,
dark elf.
it does make a lot
Not
of sense.
cool like Drizzt the dark elf.
Because like children develop based around their circumstances, right?
Yeah.
And so a child of a coupling outside of marriage has all sorts of different disadvantages there. But the other thing is they're probably not particularly wanted children, and they're also probably not particularly good home environments because of the circumstances.
It's funny you bring that up because I was along this kind of same track with Maeglan in particular. He also, for a good portion of his upbringing, he lived in a very isolated environment.
Oh yeah.
So when it came to, to use a modern term, societal norms, he probably didn't have any experience with that. So he probably just saw Eärendil and was like, "Oh, she's really pretty." Like he did
Like he had no sense of like
that immoral, the immorality of that did not. There's no connective tissue.
Yeah,
there
it's
for him.
that's an interesting point because it's like he literally doesn't
you
know
also also think of Eol and his character, and how much of a good influence on Maeglan was Eol?
Not. Not one at all.
Exactly.
So
he grew up with this really horrible father figure, and that developed his personality.
Yeah. And then he ends up escaping with his mom. I thought that I gotta say, of all of the stories of characters, like the individual stories, I gotta say his story was like probably my favorite because I thought it was really, really interesting. And like I just was like, this is I don't know what it just, there was something about the story. It felt very like mythological. I could talk. Sorry guys, I have been awake for like we're fighting off colds and stuff, so
everybody's coming down with stuff. It's that time of year.
Yeah, and then the new cat, and we're all freaking out about him. I hope he comes out, but he's probably scared of the lights. Anyway, so
we're entering the actual fall of Gondolin here, where Maeglan gets captured and betrays Turgon and Gondolin because he's promised Eärendil and to rule Gondolin.
Yeah, I felt like he kind of like gave me like Wormtug vibes. Like he was just someone that was just weak of character that you could turn.
Interestingly, there's the 12 houses of Gondolin. Glorfindel is the head, the lord of the House of the Golden Flowers. Maeglan is the lord of the House of Molds.
Oh yeah. I remember that. I'm like, that's significant for later, isn't it? And then I forget
because that's his tunneling, right? Like, but each of these houses comprise the sort of military of the of Gondolin. And in the fall of Gondolin, there's another lord,
Ecthelion.
Ecthelion is sort of the second in command after Turgon, but there's the lord of I think it's Salgun, lord of the harps. But he's a coward who, when the attack happens, refuses to go out. And so he also designs to make an agreement with Morgoth, but his men refuse to go out, or refuse to stay back, and they go out. And during the battle in the fountain, where Ecthelion dies, fighting Gothmog, who is the Lord of the
Balrogs.
Actually, there are two Lords of the Balrogs. but
There's
Gothmog is
Gothmog.
the first of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the second of them is Lungorthin, who is the Balrog that Glorfindel kills.
Oh.
And so, but the Fall of Gondolin goes into details of this sort of battle and how Maglin and his men betray Gondolin, and obviously Maglin kidnaps Idril and I'm blanking on the son's name.
The son.
Why am I? It's
Eärendil.
Yeah, it's such an important name.
Yeah.
Why am
Eärendil.
Oh yeah, it's Eärendil.
It's Eärendil, yeah.
But
you always remember that name, and it's just so bad because of like Frozen, and I had to like watch a bunch of like kids at a dance recital, and I watched that movie like 15 times, and that's like the name of the kingdom is Eärendil.
Well, thanks. Now I feel a mental connection. But so in this battle, Glorfindel and the few remaining warriors of the House of the Golden Flower are the ones that barricade the way. And it's mentioned in here, but they're fighting in the Great Plaza, and they're pushing away. And so the reason why Glorfindel is particularly chosen as being the individual to send back in the Third Age is because of his nobility of sacrifice and nobility of character, because he and his men fight to the absolute bitter end, and it's them and their sacrifice where other individuals and others of the houses are giving way and fleeing and no longer or trying to turn sides.
Yeah. Where it was like he's right up there with Beleg from like the Turin Turambar story. So
Glorfindel is the individual who it actually happens very infrequently in this story, where an individual stands knowing that they are going to die and is entirely okay with that to sacrifice themselves to allow others to escape. And Hur and the men are one group of that, and Glorfindel and his men are the other group of that.
Yeah, so what ends up happening till we get to this escape is that like Morgoth attacks Gondolin, and then Maglin takes Idril, like he's gonna run away with the girl, and then he gets into a duel with Tuar. Tuar kills him, and they and the others escape through the secret tunnels, and the tunnels actually led out in like a plains area, but they still had to go through the mountain pass to get out. And then it's in this mountain pass that like they get attacked by the Balrogs and stuff, and that's Glorfindel's like great fight. And I think there was a really cool illustration I found, and I put in the beginning of the guy like falling off the cliff with the Balrog.
There is so much artwork of that battle.
Yeah, that was hard trying to put stuff in the beginning of that, but yeah. So
just like look how after they escape, and they made a feast in memory of Gondolin and of the elves who had perished there, of the maidens and the wives and the warriors of the king, and for Glorfindel the beloved many were the songs they sang under the willows of Manetheren in the waning year. So Glorfindel in particular is an individual that the people of Gondolin loved and cherished as
he's their champion,
as a noble individual, not just because he's also present in all the battles.
Yeah.
And so he held I think it was the left flank. For Turgon in the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, which was another one of those aspects that allowed Turgon to escape. So this guy, when you go into his actual details and his actual history, for somebody who has such a small passage, in the Silmarillion, he is a highly important, impactful character within the.
I almost feel like in this section of the book, it's like the chapters aren't that long and there isn't that much text of it, and it doesn't seem to have the like monumental sort of language and the like more personal storytelling. Like it's very like a recollection.
It's very much
historical.
Very much like the books of the Chronicles and of the Kings in the Bible.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say. It's very like it's not as personal, I guess.
There's some stories that they don't go into crazy details, but there's stuff like I forget the fella's name, but he held up a field against the Philistines, and he fought so long that his hand stuck, like he couldn't ungrip his hand. Right, but it's just little phrases like that have so much story behind them that you can imagine in your head.
Couple quick things to note. This is the first battle. The fall of Gondolin, the siege of Gondolin, is the first battle where Balrogs are killed. Prior to that, nobody had ever slain a Balrog.
Who was it? Oh yeah, because like didn't Feanor try to kill Balrog?
No, well Feanor tried to kill 3 of them.
3 of them, yeah. Just don't go big or go home, Feanor. Go big.
Right.
Fingon tried to kill Goth. He was in a one-on-one duel with Gothmog, and another Balrog came from behind and snared him, and then Gothmog killed him with an axe.
Which was that other other named Balrog, Lungorthin.
Yeah. But there's another important, because you brought up the 12 houses. There's a very, very important house in Gondolin called the House of the Hammer of Wrath.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of this house were at once captives of Morgoth. And they had a particular disdain for orcs and Balrogs. And they were the first to actually slay Balrogs during the siege of Gondolin, when they had to deal with ironclad dragons and Balrogs and all sorts of like terrors. They were the first to face the onslaught. And they were apparently, if I recall correctly, I have the book right here, I can open it up, but they were bigger than most elves as far as like muscular strength. They were just stronger. And they usually carried they were
fought with maces and hammers of most other elves.
That's freaking street. I love it.
And so what happened was Gothmog ended up pinning them where they were at. And so instead of trying to get his men to flee or anything like that, Rog, who was the leader of the House of the Hammer of Wrath, just led a straight up charge against Balrogs and dragons. And it said for every one of the House of the Hammer of Wrath, they took 7 of the enemy with them. Something I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along those lines. So these guys, like, they deserve a big shout out along the same level of Ecthelion and Glorfindel and all those other great houses. Like,
so is this in like another story, or is this?
Yeah, it's in expanded the Unfinished Tales and the Fall of Gondolin and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, so Glorfindel's return. Glorfindel's return, or is him being sent back, is enumerated in Unfinished Tales then?
Yeah, sort of the reasons why Glorfindel was chosen to be the one to go back was because of that sort of selflessness of character, similar to how Gandalf was said, like, Gandalf, you can go back because you held to your mission, you sacrificed yourself. We're letting you go back, but we're giving you a little bit of a power bump.
Here, have a mushroom.
Yeah,
because that's when I was reading this, I always thought it was the same Glorfindel, and then I was sitting there saying, wait, he died. Wait a minute, hold on a second here. And having not read Unfinished Tales, it's good to have that connection.
It has to be the same Glorfindel because no 2 elves have the same name.
And the other thing, there's a reason why when Glorfindel in The Lord of the Rings shows his full power to the Nazgul, that the Nazgul all collectively crap his pants. They're like,
that scene.
Glorfindel stands there and says, fuck around, find out, and
Yeah,
the
come at me,
man's
bro.
like,
I know. I used to thought he was a jerk
is-
for doing that to the elves or to the fellowship of whoever was at that point at that time, and I'm like, okay,
It was,
here.
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
he literally
That-
just because, well, the thing is, it's to not to fast forward too much, but in the Lord of the Rings, the reason why he doesn't go with the Fellowship, albeit he would be a boon power wise, is because he'd also be a giant bullseye for
Yeah,
Sauron.
that's what I was
Sauron would
thinking
see his
too.
power.
Like he's gonna be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene in Lord of the Rings, that was one of those scenes where getting that revelation of these elves when they sit there and they take on their ethereal form and just kind of burst forth like that.
yeah.
I was just kind of like, oh, I can't wait to see that in the movies, and then it didn't happen. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Well, and here's the thing, right? You think about not to get us too sidetracked, but you think about one elf like Glorfindel, right?
Uh-huh.
And you see that. Now imagine there's like 10,000 of those dudes against you, like in
Right.
the full regalia and like the actual might of the elves. That's actually kind of terrifying to think about if you're the bad guys.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, but at the same time, it also it's like they had to have that in order to combat the evil that they were pit
Mhm.
against, and
That's
so
true.
it should also tell you like, hey, what the Fellowship is going against is really bad.
Yeah.
You know, and
in-
so
in
it's an
reply
impressive
to,
David
in reply
versus
to this
Goliath kind
comment
of
on the
thing.
screen here, Glorfindel's brass balls would be making too much noise as they walk along.
Yeah. Can you imagine that they're going through Moria, the Balrog shows up, the Balrog's just like, oh crap, I know who this dude is. I heard about this. I'm not about this life.
Like like that scene in Dumb and Dumber when he's having this dream and he gets knocked over and then he just stands right back up and
Yeah.
goes,
Well,
For the part in Princess Bride where like, oh, it's like at the end and like Inigo Montoya, like he just runs.
right. Well, it's like, who's the old man with the pointy hat? I'll fight him. Okay, I'll
Right.
fight him. Let's do that.
Yeah, Grandpa there, he's not gonna be able to fight me.
Oh,
my
wait,
goodness.
he's one of me. Oh crap.
Right.
Oh, nice
Oh,
disguise,
man.
bro. Ah.
Right.
Okay, so
To bring it back,
Yes, bring it back.
we've sort of gone through the fall of Gondolin, how the people escaped and managed to meet up with
survivors
the
of Doriath.
survivors of Doriath.
Mhm.
But I also want to highlight this last paragraph here. In those days, Tuor felt old age creep upon him, and ever longing for the deeps of the sea grew stronger in his heart.
Mhm.
Therefore, he built a great ship, and he named it Eärendil, which is Sea Wing. And with it, Idril Celebrimbor, he set sail into the sunset and the west, and came no more into any tale or song. But in after days, it was sung that Tuor, alone of men, was numbered among the elder race, and was joined with the Noldor whom he loved, and his fate is sundered from the fate of men.
Mm.
So this is a parallel to Beren and Luthien,
Mhm.
Yeah.
where Luthien chooses to have her end with the men and have the doom of men and the death and what happens to men. Whereas in this case, Tuor is granted to be in the halls of Mandos and to have the end of the elves.
Yeah, it's like a trade in
For
sports.
his
Yeah,
help
we'll
for
give you
that.
Luthien for Tour.
Yeah, right.
I'm not
I
certain
feel
who
like
got the
it's
better
almost
deal
like
there.
it's
Right.
like
Yeah.
the choice of the characters. It's like she chooses the mortal life and she does so much to help the people. He
Mhm.
chose to serve the elves and did so much to help the elves that they both kind of ended up with a certain, like, I guess you could call it apotheosis. They don't exactly die.
Mm,
So
yeah, because the
How
fate of
interesting.
it's very interesting. The fate of the elves is obviously known. If they die, they go to the halls of Mandos, become rebodied. They live in Valinor. The fate of men is unknown. It's
don't.
unknown. I believe it's unknown even to Manwë. The only one that knows is Eru Ilúvatar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
like making that point in the beginning when we were like talking about it, and it's like, yeah, they don't know what happens. Like they're just guys. Like, yeah. So okay. So I think this is really interesting because these chapters work really well with each other to sort of
Mhm.
setting up the next chapter, and then this one sets up chapter 24, which is the Voyage of Eärendil in the War of Wrath. And
Oh, great chapter.
oh yes, this is like I felt really like, I don't know, with these chapters, it's like there's so much information, it's so much story in the previous battles in the chapter, and these ones are so much shorter than those that I don't know if there wasn't as much source material for Christopher to write this or what happened here, but I was expecting this part of the story to be a lot bigger and grander, but then it kind of isn't. But then I was thinking maybe that's like the point of it, is to kind of get you to use your imagination with it.
Right. Exactly. Well, and the thing is too, I'm sure
Oh
I
my gosh.
imagine the Luthien Valor fine just take it. Yeah, right.
Welcome, Finway, no Finway.
I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. I think to me it comes across because the War of Wrath chapter should be huge. It really, really should be, given the scale of it. But I think because there were so many other larger narratives that Christopher Tolkien was working with when he was revising the Silmarillion, like there wasn't. It's almost kind of like the Dagor Dagorath, the Battle of the End of Days. It was like, let me just condense this. Let me just kind of give a Cliff Notes version of this, because we have these larger tales, your Baron and Luthiens, your Children of Eärendil, everything like that, that really need to be focused on more. I think it was really just a case of Christopher prioritizing. And then you get greater details in the later History of Middle Earth books and everything like that. But
yeah, definitely.
But as far as the Quenta Silmarillion goes, I believe it was just a case of J.R.R. Tolkien and subsequently posthumously Christopher prioritizing explaining certain events over others, which is why this chapter is so short.
Yeah, so this is, I want everyone, I don't know, can I like,
hey.
Let me try it, let me show them. Oh, I'll edge you guys back. Oh, there, this is my cat. This is George. Or our cat. Sorry.
Oh,
he is a big boy. He is definitely, I don't know.
I have 3 of them. Have fun.
Yeah, I've had a lot of cats in my life. I think I did a few streams when I was still living in California where like my cat Achilles, because I used to have a bunk bed, and he would jump from my bunk bed onto my computer desk, and it was just awful because he's a very big cat. He was like 15 pounds. This guy's 13. But yeah, he's a big guy. But anyway, so we have Eärendil. So he takes to sailing, and this is basically because the elves around they're at the mouth of the Syrian River. They've met the elves that were living on that island, Valar, I think that's what it was called. And they've learned the ways of the sea. And I think, again, that's interesting because of the call of the sea, and it's calling us back to like going home. And that always gets to me because as a Californian and somebody who loves the ocean, I'm just like, it's 34 degrees. I feel the call of the sea. But I think about that when I'm pricing
Right.
It's also a very British thing. The call of the sea to take you back home to the Isles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's something. I genuinely think there's something to that from a place of where you're brought up.
Yeah.
For instance, like, I've gone to, the East Coast. I've been in various different places of this country, but I always I always call them my mountains, because I'm literally like I'm a 10-minute drive,
I know
a 5-minute drive from the
Yes.
Rocky Mountains. I literally have a wall of mountains that I can look out and stare at, and if I'm ever far enough away from them for too long, I start to have like a longing for them, like I want to go back. And it's
the Great Havens. I feel that. It's the thing.
Yeah. There's something about just being home. I think it's it's not just I know Tolkien never intended for any allegory, but it can certainly be seen as an allegory for homesickness. Your home is being on the sea. Your home is. He calls it straight up. It's kind of. I don't recall if it's said this in, if it's said in the books or not, but I know it's referenced this way in the films. Elrond says it's time for us to go back home. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but it very much is a case of returning to your roots.
Or like it's the whole thing. Like I know a lot of like world mythology goes back to like the water is where you came from. Like the waters like of the sea, the waters of your mother's womb. It's a very like primordial image. So I really like that.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of interesting because, like, when we got to the start of this and the elves knew that the coming of men was going to mean that this signifies the end of their age, it kind of makes sense that we're having the sea people come back, and the longing for the sea, like, be emphasized more is because it's like it's the end of their era, and maybe people are starting to realize this. I don't know. I have a lot of kind of thoughts on that, but yeah, so Eärendil takes to sailing. He's looking for Tuor and Idril, and he wants to bring the messages of elves and men to Valor. Like, he wants to tell them what's happening and see if they can help. And he works with Círdan the shipwright. This guy, way back from the beginning of the story, I like how he comes back to build a ship, and he calls it Vingalot.
Bearded elf is best.
Bearded elf.
He's an OG elf. He was there at the Awakening. Like, yes, he's truly ancient.
Sauron as a cat. Yeah, that tracks.
Because cats are evil, right?
Evil.
Telvido, right? Telvido was his name. The cat. Sauron the cat.
Oh, yes. All right. So while he's away, Eärendil goes out on a voyage, and he has his prize ship, and he's like looking for things, and he's kind of exploring. And while he's away, the sons of Feanor come back, and what do you think they're going to do? Yay!
It's a party. We're just a big happy family.
Right.
I know. So they come back and they attack and destroy like the last remnants of Gondolin and Doriath. And then there, Amrod and Amos are killed, and Maedhros and Maglor actually live. So they're the last two, and I think it's kind of fitting in a way.
The two oldest and the two youngest. And something about this that's particularly sad is Ne'er-Danel, the wife of Feanor, begged and pleaded with Feanor to leave Amrod and Amras in Valinor.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because she was so afraid that they were going to get killed, and they were the last two that died in combat.
That is really sad. I mean, I feel bad for his wife, because she's like, please don't put this evil on me. Don't put this on our children. Like,
and Feanor essentially, he called her, what was it? He called her an ungrateful spouse.
Yeah. like shut up. Like, I'm doing my thing. Like,
oh man.
Yeah, so and during this battle, Elrond, like who we all remember from Lord of the Rings, he and his brother Elros are taken captive. So
yes.
Yes. And then
but Maglor takes a shine to them.
Yes.
And this is also one of those things where up until this point, Maedhros has been the most reasonable of all of Feanor's children that we've really encountered. We haven't really heard much about Maeglos at all. But Maedhros has been this fella who's just kind of been like, okay, the doom is horrible, and I don't really want any part of it anymore, but I'm stuck in it.
Yeah.
But he's been a very peaceable individual with all the other elves, with all the men. He's had his sole focus being the enemy, being Morgoth is our target, our only target.
Was he the one that lost his hand?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and he was the one. Wasn't he the one that actually like got the reunification? Or was that him?
Yeah. Oh well, he stepped down from the throne, if you want, of being the High King because he was the eldest son of Feanor, and he passed it to Fingolfin in his house instead, which his brothers were not happy about. But he's the one. Him and Fingon, I should say, are the ones that kind of mended the ties between the two houses.
They did.
Something interesting to note. And it's been a question on Discord servers I've been in, Tolkien forums I've been in, and it's never really been addressed properly in the Legendarium. Is the fact of Maglor. It's interesting. Elrond never sought him out after the War of Wrath. We'll get into what happens in the war and all that, but it's just something to note as we go forward that Elrond never tried to seek out the two remaining sons of Feanor. It's never mentioned.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Even though he was in their care for like the longest time, and as it said, like a friendship ended up growing between the four of them.
I wonder
Elrond
if
and his
he
brother.
was worried about, like, if he got involved with them, if he would be tied up into the doom as well.
Well,
but we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get
So
to that.
yeah, what happened? So during this, the third kinslaying, I can't believe we're at third kinslaying, right? Third time's a charm. Ugh.
Yay.
So Elwig, she jumps into the sea to save the Silmaril that was in the necklace, and she's gonna just take it to the sea to her grave, kind of a thing. But she's actually saved by Ulmo, and Ulmo turns her into a bird, and she flies to Eärendil on a ship. Eärendil, she's wearing the Silmaril and sails to Valinor. She flies to Eärendil, okay, and then she meets him, and then he wears the Silmaril, and they sail together to Valinor, and only he and Elwig get onto the island. So they land there, and he doesn't want to incur the wrath of the Valar and everyone that's there. So they're like, just stay on the boat. So he goes to the island, and then she is like, you're my husband. I am, ride or die. I'm going with you. So she steps out on the land too, and she waits for him on the shore. And there it is that Eärendil and Ulmo, they address the Valar finally. Like, I was kind of, it's like, I guess they had to get to a certain point before this could happen. And I think that's what happened. I think when like Fingolfin was trying to get people to fight, is that they weren't ready to hear them or something like that. And they addressed the Valar, and who let them stay there. And again, like everyone else, they can pick their fates. You can stay here, or you can have the mortal death of men. And they choose to go with the elves. So this was interesting. What do you guys think about this, with what the Valar finally decide and they get involved?
Because of the way I read, in the manner in which I read Tolkien, I read in Middle Earth because I'm so engrossed in it as like an actual history. Like I read, like if I read about it the same way I'd read about Alexander the Great, I just read about it as like a very, even though I look at it. So when I look at it that way, I get really angry at the Valar, because it's like, you guys could have quit being so spiteful towards the House of Feanor. That's really where your anger's all at, is the House of Feanor. Okay, fine. But does that mean that you had to let
people in this like book series? It's like all of the people. I got like really mad when men started dying and were willing to take my short life. I'm going to fight evil, and all of the elves were like, I don't care. I'm going to live for like 1,000 million years.
Let me put it to you this way: if the Valar got involved before the driving forces for the oath of Feanor, and so that sort of first group of people going, if they had got involved before, when they were still active, and brought them back in, as we will see, it was very difficult for them to give up that oath. So if they had interceded when they were still under the doom of Mandos, still under the doom of the Silmarils, what would happen? So they had to wait for the time to come when, sort of similar to the children of Israel wandering in the
desert.
The desert. That generation had to pass before they were able to
I feel like that. I guess I should kind of quantify it and say, like, earlier in the story, I got more mad at like the elves that they wouldn't like do more. It's like so many of them were so focused on their little piece of Middle Earth and their whatever they had created, that they couldn't see that there were outside forces that were threatening their existence, and thus the existence to everyone. And it's like, I remember at the beginning, it's like their existence and their survival was tied to the survival of artists. So you think they would be more involved, or like care more about protecting it. And I think that's where my frustration came from. So
Well, and the other group I get actually very frustrated with is the Sons of Feanor themselves, because
oh my god, yeah, like whoa, your kids, bro.
Here's my thought process. You see so many bad things happen, kind of as Mandos alluded to when he read out the curse to them on the shores of the sea, saying, "Hey guys, look, Kin's going to betray Kin. There's going to be a lot of backstabbing. You guys are going to lament all this, blah, 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 blah." You would think seeing that happen, all that transpire, would give the Sons of Feanor cause to pause and at least try. I understand if it's like not feasible, but at least try to maybe renounce the oath and say, look, we give up our claim to the Silmarils, essentially. By Eru Ilúvatar, if Eru Ilúvatar will forgive us for our stupidity, like we just need help, and we give up our claim and pretty much like kind of put yourself, because they'd have to put themselves on trial for war crimes, essentially, because all the crap.
Yeah, it was interesting to think. It's like, would any of them ever gone on like a redemption arc where they tried to have seek forgiveness from Ilúvatar?
That's the frustrating thing with Maedhros is he seems to be on that trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
But as we see at the end of the battle, when they get the Silmarils, all three of them, Maedhros just cannot release the oath, even though Maglor maybe he could have used barons. But Maglor is there as well, and you see there's the debate between the two of them going on and on and on. But they both, like, Maglor is, despite arguing against Maedhros, Maglor is still at fault because he agrees to go with Maedhros.
I know that's really crazy. In a lot of ways, I feel like the Silmarillion is very Old Testament, and the Lord of the Rings is very New Testament.
Yeah,
very much so.
Very much so.
Yeah, it's tough to just fight against your natural nature.
True.
You may have intents to do these things, but then you just kind of find out, well, I didn't want to do this, but this is just kind of how it goes.
True. And the thing about Tolkien's magic system, we were talking about magic systems earlier, is that oaths and curses are extremely important. And if you swear an oath by Eru Ilúvatar, you better come about that oath the right way, because there's going to be serious repercussions for that.
Yeah, that's don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, and you see it happen time and again. You see, obviously, the Oath of Feanor, the Doom or the Curse of Mandos, Curse of Morgoth. One that doesn't get talked about as much is, to fast forward quite a few thousand years, is the Curse of Isildur puts on the men of Dunharrow.
Yeah,
he curses them.
The burial rites.
You guys are going to stick around until. Hi, English
lady. Nice to see you.
Oh,
England
man.
is awesome.
England is the most beautiful land ever.
I've never been, although I've been
to Scotland. It's gorgeous.
Scotland is gorgeous. Yes,
Wales is gorgeous. I still argue that my state is the most beautiful place on God's green earth, but it's just I'm a homer for my own state.
That's purely bias. I have no bias when I say England is the best, despite me being English. It's no bias whatsoever.
I have a huge bias. It's.
I don't know. You live in Oregon in the fall, so talk to me.
I'm from Ohio. It's just home. That's it.
Right.
But in terms of glorious settings and everything, Ohio's got some great stuff, but it's nothing
pretty
compared to some other places.
It's not the Tetons and all that. The Rockies and stuff.
You have giant inland seas, though. I am a little jealous. You got the Great Lakes over there.
There's some just natural stuff in the foothills that are some pretty phenomenal things to see. I mean, there is stuff there.
Algonquin Park in Ontario is gorgeous. When you get out of the typical campsite areas and get actually out into it, it's it is beautiful.
I can't remember.
Awesome.
I can't remember real quick. Not to get on a tangent, obviously, we need to finish. We need to close up this chapter. But there's a place I believe it was outside of Toronto. My dad took me ages ago, and it was an old rock quarry. That ended up becoming, it was a really pretty lake. I cannot remember the name of it. I just remember it was outside of Toronto, but Canada, what a brief time I was there and saw of it, is actually really pretty country. He's in Ohio. Yeah. Lake Erie is easily the
sorry.
Hold on.
He's in Ohio. Lake Erie is the lamest of the lakes, despite Cleveland maintaining its flammability.
Now that is that.
Hold on.
That's the river that's in Cleveland. The Cuyahoga River that caught on fire because of all of the dumping that they did in that river.
That is so awful. Where are the ants when you need them?
Hey, Trip.
Hi, Trip.
Trip, there has not been that much snow. Stop it. Stop your whining. It's not. It hasn't been that much snow.
I feel like we can't complain about snow. It's only December. We had another snowstorm last night, but it already melted. Thank God.
I'm not looking forward to February. That's the coldest month here, and it's gonna be like -10 and freezing. Yeah, it doesn't even really like snow. Like we get some big snowstorms, but the most part about our winters is just the brutal cold. It gets extremely cold. Like you can wear like 4 or 5 layers and you're still in like physical pain because of how cold it is. Like it's just it gets nuts. But anyway, let's get back into Middle Earth.
So I thought this is interesting.
Start.
Yes,
because this kind of goes back to the beginning, but like Eärendil, after he addresses that and he decides to take his fate with the elves, his boat is sent into the heavens, so up into the sky, and he journeys into parts unknown, and Elwig learns to fly like a bird and flies to him, and we get another establishment of a celestial event where like she's got the Silmaril and she flies up, and it's like a star. Yeah, he's got it. Excuse me. He's flying up and she's flying to him. Excuse me. Yeah. She had it earlier. And
but his ascent into the sky with the Silmaril is a light that everybody can see on Middle Earth, and that's a sign to Maedhros and Maglor, and to Morgoth that a battle is coming.
Yep. And something interesting in our callback too is there's 2 Maiar in the heavens with Eärendil.
Doing the sun in the
sun
moon.
And the moon. And
so you have the 3 lights of the trees.
Yes.
That is very cool.
And one of those Maiar was almost tempted into the service of Melkor at that time. But refused. But refused.
Didn't they fight him, and he was so afraid of the female one's like burning energy because she was the sun?
Well, they never fought, but Morgoth.
Oh no, they didn't fight. She was.
Morgoth was indeed terrified of her. Yeah. But yeah, there's essentially 3 celestial beings, and Elwing. Something. Just a quick footnote here. Elwing also learns to speak in the language of birds. She learns to communicate with the birds.
That's really cool.
But anyway, yeah. So Eärendil is sailing the cosmos.
Yeah. So the Valar sent. Oh, right. So the battle is starting. The Valar send forces to attack Melkor. And so there isn't a lot of description about this. They talk about them going there and they fight the Balrogs, and most of the Balrogs are destroyed. A lot of the orcs too. Melkor sends dragons. Eärendil attacks with the eagles, and all of the people in the sky fight, and they kill all the dragons. And they go through the pits of Morgoth and destroy all of that and kind of expose it to the light. And he's eventually captured. And Melkor is eventually captured and chained. And the Silmarils are recovered. And a lot of the prisoners are freed.
Quick character to note is Ancalagon the Black.
Yeah, I'm just trying to bring up a picture that suitably displays his...
I've got the one if you need one.
Okay, yeah. Just because it's something that people don't really notice when they read this, but
he is
when you see the image of him,
Yeah.
he's big.
While you pull that up, I'll just read this from Will. Fun fact: Eärendil was the first seminal character of J.R.R. Tolkien's mythology. His name and purpose as a character were inspired by an excerpt of Sinewolf that Tolkien found in the poem Christ.
Okay,
I'm not familiar with that.
Me. Up here.
Yes, Smaug's just a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's
Caligon.
Ancalagon.
Dragon.
He's the runt of the litter.
Oh, you just stole it from the wiki. Will, you just should have said. You should have kept your mouth shut.
The other thing to note is that these dragons are winged dragons. So
Yes.
Glaurung was not a winged dragon.
Right. I remember reading that somewhere.
Absolutely. I know. It's so weird. It's like there's so much information and stuff like outside, like in the Apocrypha that you're reading it and you're like, I don't know what this is. So does anyone want to add anything about this giant battle?
Well, I
felt
have
like
a question while I'm pulling this picture up.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Oh, what I was gonna say is, I was gonna ask Gadfly. Actually, I'm gonna ask all of you. How do you think? Because Eärendil kills Ancalagon. I'm curious as to like how. Like it just states that he slew him, and it's like Ancalagon is so massive. It had to have been something like magical that he used. I've seen all kinds of theories where it was like a massive laser beam from a Silmaril, that he just flew the boat right through him. Like there's all kinds of theories about how Eärendil killed Ancalagon.
Little Mermaid style.
You know what? I have
Yeah,
the greatest
exactly.
theory. Okay, like he's got the boat, he's got the Silmaril. Like maybe he got something from like the dwarves of like some kind of mechanical thing. So it's basically a giant like can of Raid, and he just holds up the Silmaril and starts to like fire and just burns the dragon that way.
I imagine it's like Empire Strikes Back. You know?
Yeah, like
the snow speeders and the harpoons.
something like that too.
But it actually, like the whole point of this battle being so vague is the fact that it is so grand, so big.
Yeah, that's what I was really thinking. It's like you'd almost ruin it
for a person to really comprehend everything. And I think that's another one of those aspects.
Here we go. Here's the like.
Yeah,
some of the battles of
World War
One were just so.
Yeah, and think about it, like the aerial battles too. The first time there was an aerial battle.
And is that little?
Can you guys see that picture that I got pulled up?
Eärendil?
Yeah,
that's right there. Yeah,
because when
that's how
Ancalagon falls, he destroys an entire city.
That's crazy.
Well, he destroys 3 different mountains. Like he just it's.
So one of the theories in how he destroys the dragons is simply because the Silmaril is abhorrent to the touch of anything evil. Mm-hmm. So all he has to do is is Nerdporial in the chat? If he is, mute for a bit. I'll put my hands down when you can stop muting. All right, you good, Nerdporial? If you're there, but it's like Matt with the talisman and the golem in Wheel of Time. Oh. All he has to do is force the touch of the medallion onto the golem for a long enough amount of time,
and it dies.
Yeah.
I was thinking actually, like, because they talk about Melkor wearing the Silmarils in his crown, and it's so painful to him, and it hurts him. And think about what he is compared to these dragons that are just. So I'm gonna put my hands
down now for Nerdporial.
That's very interesting. Yeah, it's definitely it has to do with something with the Silmaril or the Silmaril.
Yeah,
that
just
holy water.
The touch of the Silmaril onto somebody evil or evil-hearted,
right?
Or consumed with
Galadriel's file.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and that's the light of the Eärendil. I mean, so I mean, like if you take that same Silmaril that did what it did to the wolf that took Baron's hand,
Karkaroth.
right? Karkaroth, yeah.
Karkaroth.
So I mean, it drove him mad, and he became a wild beast basically instead of, doing what Morgoth wanted him to do. So I mean, that same thing there. It's possible that it almost kind of pulled some of that power from Karkaroth and then was added to that, kind of imbibing that moving forward. That's an assumption of mine. Obviously, that's not anything that I know is canon, but
yeah, or think
either
of
way.
it like every time people have used a Silmaril and they've used it for a wholesome and good purpose, it's like they've gotten like a plus like 10 for like the holiness of their mission, like the goodness of their hearts. I'm sure that like when he was fighting this evil thing, there was some divine providence for him too.
And I'm sure that what his mission was in terms of when the Valar sent him up on that ship, part of that involved another, mega power that he would not have had otherwise.
And it's like the Top Gun of Middle Earth. Come on.
And the thing about the Silmarils, the reason the Silmarils weren't well, what's the word I'm looking for? They were not repulsed by evil, evil was not repulsed by them because they were the Silmarils themselves, but it was because Varda hollowed them.
Yeah,
it was Varda who was the reason why evil hands couldn't touch them, without getting scorched.
But the evil hand still desired them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the other thing to note about the battle in the sky was that Thorondir and the eagles and Elwing with all the other birds joined the battle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like screaming eagles.
So it's not going to be just, Eärendil just clinging on to Ancalagon.
This is so hilarious.
It's all sorts of other stuff going on too, but the Silmaril has to be some sort of aspect in the death of those things.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
I genuinely think that the death of Ancalagon, my honest opinion is that it was some sort of undescribed magic that Eärendil used to make Ancalagon fall. It's the only feasible explanation for it. Other than, I mean, there is something else that takes precedent. If we go back to the fall of Gondolin for a second, the way that Ecthelion kills Gothmog, he has a pointed helmet. He loses his sword and he runs at Ecthelion runs at Gothmog rather, and pretty much drives his head into Gothmog and kills him. And so, I mean, you could do the flying boat theory. I think it just looks really dumb.
Because Lord of the Rings is a British thing, it can't be anything from Metallica. It has to be an Iron Maiden song that he shreds.
There you go. Right. Oh man.
Oh my gosh. This is funny. It's like there's no description of this, and it reminds me of that part in Talladega Nights when they're all talking about like their favorite versions of Jesus, and like it's like I like Christmas Jesus, and I'm like, oh, so funny.
It's almost like Tolkien is kind of both J.R.R. Tolkien and Christopher Tolkien are kind of giving the reader kind of like the authority on it. It's one of those things where it's like, obviously you can use your imagination to, what characters look like, what different things look like, weapons, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to specific events like this, it's really like, just use your imagination, get creative with it. Here, I'm giving the reader the reins of like, how do you think this
I
works?
appreciate that.
It's another example of small descriptions and small narrations allow the reader or the viewer to come up with the thing that is most whatever in their minds. It's why the most successful horror films are ones that don't really reveal and by successful I mean the ones that are most terrifying to people are the ones that don't reveal the villain, the monster, because in every single instance the person watching creates the most terrifying thing in their own mind. So this is very similar, where he gives you a broad picture, and we can imagine in our own minds the thing that is most exciting and frightful and tragic within our own
I completely agree, and I actually appreciate having that to be your, like, use your imagination. What is the worst thing for you? What is the worst battle that you could think of? And yeah,
well, and
I like
something to add to this to the conversation about this battle is it is stated that a matter of fact, if I remember the quote correctly, it was and a part of men fought on the side of Melkor, or on the side of Morgoth, and the elves do not forget it.
Yes, and I was gonna bring that up. Like, what do you guys like? Does that like play out later, or like?
I think this is really one of the. It's kind of an introduction to the theme of fear when it comes to the. I don't want to call them the lesser men, but the other group of men, your Easterlings, your Haradrim, things like that, where if you look at later in the history, where they essentially are, they're consumed by fear of Sauron later on, and which is the whole reason why they serve him in the first place.
Yeah.
And the men who betrayed the elves at unnumbered tiers, they were sequestered and kept kind of caged up in one particular land, and they feared Morgoth. And even though not in spite of that fear, you would think that after seeing what Morgoth was really all about, that they would want to side with the elves, but they were so afraid of Morgoth that they chose to side with him instead. And I think that's why the elves don't forget it. That's why the elves still hold a grudge about that.
Yeah.
Because the Easterlings, or who, I believe, is it stated explicitly? I have it right here, but I can't remember if it's stated explicitly if it was the Easterlings, quote unquote, that I assume it was, who sided with Morgoth in the War of Wrath.
I think so.
I believe so.
I mean, the Easterlings weren't they always on his side? Like from
no,
the get-go? No, they weren't.
There is a house that is posthumously considered among the faithful. It's the House of Bor, who fought and died on the side of Maedhros and unnumbered tiers. Bor and his sons actually died killing the traitorous sons of Ulfang.
Yeah. They go through that.
It was the Easterlings and unnumbered tiers. Okay.
Yeah. Bor and the faithful ones saw the men betraying the elves, and they took it upon themselves to do what they could to save the elves at the expense of their own lives.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was also redeeming the lost honor of their agreement and their pacts and stuff.
And that could also play into the elves, being very having a grudge, let's say, against that group of men when the War of Wrath comes around, because of that history that's already there. And then you have a stupid show that came out in 2021 that said the elves started a penal colony. Like, okay, anyway, I'm not going to get on that. Oh man, it popped into my head. It's a vile thing that even exists. I wish I could just take that and remove it out of my head. Lobotomize rings of power out of my mind.
It's entirely and completely subversive and derogatory and derisive of Tolkien's work.
It is. It absolutely is. But anyway, okay, so
so we've gone through the War of the Wrath. So there's this kind of interesting
But Morgoth gets captured and bound.
Yes, Morgoth gets captured.
Gets turned into a collar.
Mm-hmm.
His crown is a collar. If they take the Silmarillion
from him. Yeah, I believe.
Yeah,
and they kind of throw him out into the void.
Mm-hmm. Lock him behind the doors of night.
The doors of night, and I presume he never gets freed.
Well, Depends on the canon. So again, with the Dagor Dagorath, which is technically non-canon, he eventually does. I believe he frees himself. He ends up just blasting through the doors of night. But if we want to get strictly canonical, no, he stays behind there forever. It's eternal. Until I believe, the breaking of the world is repeatedly referenced in Tolkien's Legendarium, but
it reminds me of the whole like catechism and like Wheel of Time, like the Dark One sealed in the prison, like at Shigel or whatever.
But if we're going strictly canonical,
hey, it's Vic.
It's kind of inconclusive.
Hi, Vic. Hope you're doing well, Vic. Sorry.
Vic, listen, we do not allow blasphemy in this chat.
You missed that stream, okay? We're like, who's the biggest Chad, Fingolfin or Feanor? Like,
yeah, I believe we concluded that Fingolfin was the Sigma Chad.
Sigma man, the Sigma Chad, yes.
Like, Feanor's the Alpha Chad, like, still. But nice to see you. Thanks for coming by. And okay, so he kind of just gets locked up, and that is the end of that. Now, I thought the best part of this thing is kind of what happens afterwards, because we have those two sons of Feanor, and so after the battle is done, the Maiar Valar, right? Eonwë bids the elves to leave Middle Earth. And this really comes to play in all of the stuff that happens in Lord of the Rings, because they don't really explain why they have to leave then and all of that stuff. But this is the context for that, which is good. And her people, or Eon, I can't remember. That's a dude, right? Anyway,
Baranwe?
Yeah.
Or
Eonwë.
Yeah, he's the herald of Manetheren.
Yeah, the herald. Okay, yeah. I'm like,
extremely
I should have.
Powerful.
Yeah, so he has his men guarding the Silmarils, and of course, Maedhros and Maglar. Like, they had this very interesting conversation where they end up deciding to fulfill their oaths and take the Silmarils. Now, I thought this was really interesting because they're like, basically, if we take these things, we're going to just end up being recaptured and they're going to kill us. But like, we're like bound to them. Like, we're never going to get out of this oath. So what do we do? I thought that was just a really fascinating like conundrum and a situation. And what did you guys think about that part?
Yeah, well, it's the the debate between Maedhros and Maglor is, do we submit to the Valar for justice for the crimes we have committed because of this oath, which we suspect will be death, but at the same time, the Valar, in their minds, don't have the power to revoke an oath that they gave in the name of Ilúvatar.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's really interesting.
So that's the debate. It's like, do we try to revoke our oath, but it's an oath to Ilúvatar, which is not present, so we can't go and ask him. Although they have before, though, with other situations. They've asked Ilúvatar to intervene. That's the thing, which is very fascinating, and which is, to me, an indication of the corruption of their sort of souls at this point, particularly Maedhros, but Maglor is not immune to it. And so Maedhros comes to the conclusion that asking for repentance and forgiveness is not feasible because of the oath.
Which is very interesting, because I feel like the only Valar that might have been able to help them, for lack of a better term, would have been Manwë, because he knows the thoughts of Ilúvatar more than anybody else. So I really don't think that the decision that Maedhros and Maglor ended up coming to was the wise one.
I don't
Yeah,
think
to
anyone
me,
does. It's so
to
bad.
me, the conclusion is they need an intercessor.
Mm-hmm.
They need somebody to speak on their behalf.
Yes.
Which is the very Christian notion of Christ and Christ's sacrifice as being the thing that allows people to speak to God on behalf of asking for forgiveness of sins, etc., etc. And so that's the thing that it's leading to, but it doesn't get there.
Yeah.
It doesn't get to the end because that's not set up yet.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately why they can't go and do it. But they're still, their actions in going to seek the Silmaril and the slaying of the guards are incredibly wrong, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the things they try to do. Like, I think it kind of goes where it's like, okay, they would forget. There's a lot of shame, I feel like, in these two characters that lead them to do what they do. And I feel like even if they like had the opportunity to ask for forgiveness, I'm not sure that they could, because you have to kind of forgive yourselves too. And that, yeah, it's kind of, I thought this was like my favorite part of this section was what happened, and they just do it in a lot of ways. I thought that this ending was very much like reminiscent of the sort of like classical literature where you get the character where like, this is your fate and this is what has to happen to you, versus
it's also the tragic ending of they accomplished
absolutely.
They
Yeah.
accomplished the goal of getting the Silmarils, but by pursuing that goal and the actions they had taken to accomplish it, they have damned themselves.
Yep. And you actually jarred my memory by bringing up the fact that they would have needed somebody to speak on their behalf, because a part of the Doom of Mandos was saying it's completely irrelevant whether all the people who you have slain would entreat for you. You could have all of them vouch for you, and it's going to be utterly irrelevant. You know, like it's not going to matter.
Yeah, because you still did the thing.
You still did the thing. What was it Mando said? He was like, you're going to yearn for your bodies, you know, in the halls of waiting. And it's not like, you're just going to have to just keep waiting, you know, because no one's going to be able to help you. Pretty much.
Yeah, I feel like what almost comes back to them, it's like they just want to die, but like they end up not dying. And like, just to like kind of give a quick summary of this. So they both kill the guards. Maedhros is hurt by the Silmaril and despairs. So again, he gets the thing and he's not worthy, so it hurts him.
Mm-hmm.
And he throws himself into a pit of lava with the jewels. So there's like, so you have one Silmaril in the air, one Silmaril in the earth, and then the last one is Maglor. He's also hurt by the Silmaril. He can't control it. It hurts him. And he casts his out into the sea, and he wanders alone ever after. And so he is the last survivor. And then you get the Silmarils like in the world. So there's earth and air and sea. So they went to the elements and stuff like that. And the Vanyar end up returning to Valinor, and they're reconciled with Manwë and the Teleri, so the elves are gotten back together. And many of the elves stay in Middle Earth, and Círdan the Shipwright, Galadriel, Celeborn, Gil-galad, and Elrond all stay. And Morgoth is thrust out into the void and watched forever.
Elrond chooses the fate of the elves, while Elros chooses the fate of the men.
Yes.
And
that's a good idea.
In so doing, they set up the future savior by having that mix where one stays with the elves and one stays with the men.
And this go ahead.
Elros is the 50th great or 100th great grandfather of Aragorn.
Aragorn, yeah. And this goes back to something I brought up earlier in the stream. Elrond not looking for Maglor bugs me, and it still bugs me. It's never going to not bug me. It's like there's a couple of narrative reasons why it bugs me. Number one, because as I said earlier, they were in his care for so long, him and Elros both.
Yeah.
And because of that friendship that was there. But two, because of the way the kingship works for the elves, after it's the hey, spoiler warning, guys, if you haven't, if you guys don't know, after what happens to Gilgalad, Maglor, because he's still wandering the shores of Middle Earth, he's technically High King of the Noldor.
Oh,
By birthright. It would either go to him or to Elrond, one of the two.
oh.
And if he's still alive, I think Elrond, there should, maybe it's just because, both Christopher and J.R.R. Tolkien, maybe it just was never brought up, but I feel like that's something that needed to be addressed, was the fact that he never went looking for him. It always bugged me. But,
well, Maglor could not be in line of the kings because Maedhros, in surrendering the line of the kingship, he revoked the kingship of himself and his brothers.
Yeah.
So Maglor could not have become the High King.
That's what I was kind of wondering.
But also, why Elrond wouldn't go to seek him out is the question of knowing whether he continued to exist or not is a big one.
Yeah.
Where did he go? It's just another one of these characters that disappears into the story. Because we have a huge number of them, right? We don't know how Beren and Luthien perished, but we know ultimately they did perish. But they just went away from the story, and so Maeglos, not seeking him out. A part of that is he's not seeking out the folly of Feanor.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
As much as he would be a wise, unknowing, powerful individual, he's also, even if he's still existing, would still be under the influence of the doom of Feanor until he passes into the halls of Mandos. So bringing him in for advice or rulership or anything like that would ultimately doom everybody who.
That's what I was thinking, why they probably never fall this guy. And I was kind of thinking on his end, having seen everything that he's seen, I don't know if he'd want to involve anyone else in his folly.
That's a fair point. My main point of contention is I feel Elrond as a character, and because of what it says about the relationship, I wouldn't think that he would necessarily go after him or try and search for him for advice or rulership or anything like that. It'd just be more out of just friendship than anything else,
Yeah, well,
because there's a theme in Tolkien there about friendship that is reoccurring. Time we see with Bellig and Turin, Sam and Frodo. All this sort of thing.
But it's friendship that Elrond the Wise would know would be tainted by, as I said, the doom that was brought about by Feanor.
Or maybe
he's like the last of that generation that had to be cut out before the Valar were going to allow the elves back into Valinor.
Or there's also the thought that the dude kidnapped him, so it's maybe that's just some if he just being super good friends with them would be a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, or maybe he's just I appreciate your friendship, but I also kind of don't forget how you kidnapped me and my brother.
Well, it wasn't. I never read it as a kidnapping. More of it was the third kinslaying, and
I kind of read it as Maglor being I'm trying to protect these kids from my siblings who are out to murder everybody.
Here's the other thing to take into consideration too: the sons of Dior who were killed, and Maethros lamented the fact that happened, and so he probably looked upon these two, I know it's a little bit of headcanon-y, but it's perfectly reasonable to assume that he was like, we can't let this happen again. Like, we're not going to kill these 2 young boys. That's just out of the question. So that probably had something to do with it as well. But anyway, Elro, to get back on track, it's just something that it's been nagging me since I've started reading Tolkien about this. So I'm venting. I'm getting it out of my system.
Yeah, well, that's the amazing thing about Tolkien. It's like no matter how long you read it and how long you study it, you're always questioning it and trying to pick it apart to understand it further because it's so deep and complicated.
True.
When we were talking earlier about like the complexity of it, I was reminded of this chart at my university office of the ancestry of the gods, so the family tree of the gods and the heroes, and it's a massive wall chart, right? And the writing on it is minuscule, but it goes through all the Greek gods from chaos all the way down to the smallest of heroes. And I was just thinking, like, a Tolkien chart of the family tree of the elves would be similarly complex.
Yeah.
And trying to master that entire thing in a short period of time is almost impossible. And so like every time you're reading it, every time you're picking out new things and questions are constantly bubbling in the back of your head.
Absolutely. I could see like reading this like 3 or 4 times and I'm like, oh, here's something new. Here's something new.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, we're almost at like 2.5 hours, so this is officially the end of the Silmarillion, and I thought that was interesting. And next up, we have the Akalabeth and of the Rings of Power. Now, I know that these books are like, I think the Akalabeth is really long, so I don't know if we're gonna do like a combined stream or just like a part 1.
I think we should. I think we should do it. My personal suggestion would be do a 1 for each. Just do a stream about Akalabeth and then a stream about of the Rings of Power in the Third Age. That'd probably be the smartest move.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that considering that we're all getting into the holidays and stuff. So
exactly.
I was gonna ask everyone this before I like made my outro, but I didn't have time to change it because we weren't feeling well and we got a cat. So
fair enough.
Yeah, so like that's probably what it'll be, gonna let everyone know because it's probably gonna be a TBA thing because we have like conflicts with like Nerdman and everything like that. And Common was asking where to buy books. I'm with Trip, used bookstores. That's where I got my copy, wherever it is.
Thriftbooks.com or aidbooks.com are good sources.
Like my poor copy. It's like I don't think it's gonna survive. The cover is getting kind of
But yeah, thriftbooks.com definitely is a good choice. You can also if you guys in the chat are interested, if you guys are better with like auditory versus actual like just reading, like just audiobooks, that sort of deal. There's all of the audiobooks, your Silmarillion, Children of Eärendil, Fall of Gondolin, all of this is all narrated and on YouTube. So you can
I should totally link this, but the ones that I've used like a narrator is this British guy reading the Silmarillion, and he has a really great voice. I should totally put that in the description.
Children of Eärendil is narrated on YouTube. It's on YouTube and narrated by Sir Christopher Lee. So if you guys are interested in that, check that out. It's excellent.
The version that I've been using to read along while I read along with on YouTube, the guy, he modifies the original voice so it sounds a little deeper on the recording because it's Martin Shaw that does the audio. So he modifies it so it's it gets around the whole copyright, but he also uses maps and pictures as the reading's going on, so it kind of falls along, so you almost get a visual with following the map along with the reading. So it's kind of nice.
Wait, whose is that?
Oh shoot!
Oh well, I'll ask you later. It's okay.
Mention it to me on our next stream, and I'll get that together because
that seems fun.
It's pretty useful.
There is a channel, and I will absolutely shout them out because their stuff is fantastic. I just can't remember the name of it. Let me see here. But they literally go. They take each individual story and they do animations of all. They've done almost the entire Silmarillion. Where is it? Oh crap!
It's fine. While you look for it, do you guys have anything coming up? Is it Men of the West, Feanor?
What's up?
Is it Men of the West?
It's not Men of the West. Okay. No. Blah, blah, blah. Let me find it here.
Nerd of the Rings?
No. No, definitely not. No. Don't get me started.
I don't like Dragon Breed or something. But anyway, do you guys have anything coming up like Gadfly, Manetheren?
Next week we're going to be discussing a portion of Perrin from the Shadow Rising on his channel.
You guys have Nerd Band.
Yeah, so I think we're covering several Perrin chapters in there. That's in the middle of that awesome book. But that's all that I have in store.
Yeah, awesome. Anything going for you, Gadfly?
I was on Nerdporial's chill stream last Thursday, so go check that out. And I'm a bit busy with MA stuff right now, trying to finish that draft. But in the new year, I will be releasing a first draft for the rule set for my tabletop role-playing game that I am creating to replace Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice. Because that needs to happen.
Oh man,
D&D is
when it's like Feanor starting Wheel of Time. Like,
well, first of all, I'm gonna do it the right way, as I was raised. I'm gonna do it as God intended. I'm gonna start with the books, and then I'll work my way over the show.
Don't watch the show. Just read the books.
Just read the books. Okay.
It's like Rings of Power.
Yeah.
I will put that evil on you. I don't have anything coming up in the near future except book club. I'm always on with Zach's on Wednesday night, and I would recommend if you want to nerd out with me and listen to me talking about like something I don't really talk about that much. I did a stream with Ms. Martin Muses, and we talked about classical music. I used to be a classical musician. I played the French horn, and she plays the bass, and we just talk about like how we got into it, why we like it so much, different things about classical music. It was a very, very fun conversation, and I had an absolute great time. So that's up on her channel if you want to rewatch it. And
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, go for it. Ignore you find it.
The channel is called Tales of the Rings. Highly recommend it. They are criminally undersubbed. So if you guys Tales of the Rings, go give them a quick sub. They are fantastic.
Let me see if I can pull up the band. I'll drop it in the chat. Tales of the Rings. Oh, here we go. I'm gonna.
Yeah, they are.
They got
fantastic.
15,000 subs, and they're criminally undersubscribed.
They're criminally undersubscribed. I'm serious. Like they should have more subs than the stupid Nerd of the Rings. I just dropped it in rods, there. But anyway. I'm not going to get on my soapbox.
Yeah.
I'm in a good mood
another
today.
good one is the OneRing.com channel.
.com, yes. .net is terrible.
.net's garbage. .com is their good stuff. Faithful.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
Definitely.
And if you guys don't have anything else, I am going to.
Sorry.
Go for it.
I was just going to announce because you asked real quick what we all got going on. So
go for it. You didn't get to go.
As soon as we are done with this stream, I am going to be working on my script for my Middle-earth short film. to be announced release date on that. It probably won't be for like the next year and a half or so. But the cool thing is before a couple days before Christmas, I'm going to be on Twitter and showing off video and photograph footage of whatnot of where all the filming locations are going to be at, because I'm going to be going there and taking a whole bunch of still shots and video footage of where we're going to be shooting at. So look forward to seeing that, because that should be up either on the 23rd or on Christmas Eve. So.
Oh wow! Thank you so much. Well, it's out. Any further ado, then thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and feel free to share the stream. And I'm gonna remember how to hide everyone so I can play the outro and end the stream. And thanks again, and we'll look forward to seeing you later. It'll just be TBA because it's the Christmas time and everything, and I'm just hoping to finish this before the end of the year. So thank you again, and let me see. Can I hit everyone? Let's see. Oh no, it's remove. Okay, sorry guys, I'm figuring that out. Let me do this. And
here ends the Silmarillion. If it has passed from the high and the beautiful to darkness and ruin, that was of all the fate of Arda Mor. And if any change shall come and the marring be amended, Namor and Vorda may know. But they have not revealed it, and it is not declared in the dooms of Manos.